Welcome to Andy's Garage. I'm Andy Phillips. Today I'm going to show you how to remove the fuel rail from a General Motors 5.3 liter V8 engine. So let's go ahead and get started. I've already gone ahead and removed the air intake duct that kind of connects from the mass airflow sensor onto the throttle body. And the reason I did that is because there's several vehicles out there that utilize this 5.3 liter V8 engine that General Motors had made. And that air intake a lot of times varies on different ones, so I didn't want to kind of confuse anybody by showing the vehicle I'm working on, and it may not match up exactly with how your intake is. Once you get to the throttle body and this part here around the engine and the fuel rail, all that's pretty much the same. So that's how we're going to be starting this video. We're going to be starting from this point here with that already removed. So for your particular vehicle, you're just going to have to find out how to remove that whole air intake assembly up to the throttle body so we can get to this point right here. Just to identify some pieces here, you have your alternator here. There's your harness going into it that we'll have to be removing. And then coming along here on the side, here's your fuel pressure regulator and the vacuum line. So that'll be getting disconnected. And then following this is your vacuum line for your PCV valve. And it goes right back in here. Let's see if I can get a close up there for you. Goes there along the back. So we'll be removing that as well. You also have these fuel lines right here that we'll have to disconnect. And then some of these other harnesses up here on the top. There's one right back here. And then these electrical connections here, this will have to be unbolted right there with that nut. Will have to be removed so we can move that out of the way. But that's kind of what we're going to be dealing with. And then just to look at the fuel rail, you can see it right back here, running along there, and then coming onto the other side here. Let's work our way so we can see the fuel rail on this side. And then here it is on this side, here on the passenger side. So it's not too bad once you kind of get that air intake off. Now you do have your actual fuel injector plugs, and let's see, like here's one right here, and then they're going along, so you have to disconnect those as well, but we'll be getting into all that as we dive into this. But I just wanted to kind of show you what we're going to be dealing with and what we're looking at. Now these are some of the items that you're going to need to complete this. First of all, you're going to need some safety glasses, and that is for when we release the fuel pressure from the Schrader valve. You do want to be wearing some kind of eye protection. That way, if any of the spray from the fuel line comes back, you don't want it getting in your eyes. Next, you are going to need a fuel line release tool, and that's so we can release the two fuel lines from the fuel rail itself. You can pick these up at automotive stores, different places. They're very inexpensive. Just want to make sure that you get the one for the proper diameter. Next, you are going to need a 10mm socket, and that's to remove the nut from the electric harnesses on top of the engine that we'll need to move out of the way to get the fuel rail out. You are going to need an 8mm socket, and that's to remove the 4 bolts that hold the fuel rail in place. You'll need a ratchet for that. You are going to need a flathead screwdriver, and that's to release the pressure inside the Schrader valve. That way you can kind of push that in. And then last but not least, you don't need it, but I'd recommend it, some kind of a pry bar. Sometimes these fuel rails are in kind of tight, and it's good to have a pry bar so you can kind of just get underneath and give it a little push to kind of pop it out of place to get it started. And then what I don't have shown here, what you are going to need, is either some kind of a cloth or some paper towels for when you release the fuel pressure and it sprays out. That way you have something to kind of catch it so it's not dripping all over the place. So this is it right here. Next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to go ahead and remove this 10mm nut right here so we can get these wires out of the way. There's also a harness right back here that we're going to go ahead and detach. That way that's not in the way either. So let's go ahead and do that. Set that out here. Want to be careful right here, but really all that we're trying to do is just move this here out of the way. There's actually Let me get a close-up. There's another harness here that you're going to have to remove. Right back here. So we're going to go ahead and grab this. Gently pull that back. And then you do have this one right back here. I'm going to remove that as well because we don't want anything holding us up from getting full access to the fuel rail. So now this thing here can move. Now we do have an attachment here on the alternator and then going here into the actual fuel injector. So we're going to remove those next, and those will be the last of the connections. Here on the back of the alternator, there's a little clip right back here. See if I can show it. Just lift that up. There we go. To remove the harness from the fuel injectors, you got to take this little clip here, push it back like that, and then you want to pull it up so that way you can get it out of the way of the push button. See if I can show you. Let me get the camera a little bit closer. Here's a better shot of it. So what I'll do is I'll push that back. With that back, we're going to pull it up like that, pull it out of there. So now we can get to this button here, push that in, and then pull it up. And there it is. That's how it comes out. They can be a little bit tough, especially with this little locking piece on here. So just be patient. I'm going to go ahead and remove the rest of them, and we'll be right back. Okay, this is the last one here on the passenger side. Let's head over to the driver's side, do those four, and then we'll move on to the other things that need to be disconnected so we can pull the fuel rail out. We're getting ready to do this fuel injector right here, which is right below the fuel pressure regulator. We're going to go ahead and remove this vacuum line. I don't want to break that. These things are very fragile. So just gently pull up on this. Just slide it just like that, just out of the way around this vacuum line for the PCV valve to get it out of the way. The last three going this way, they're tucked behind all these hoses and lines and everything. So what we're going to do, we're going to actually go ahead and remove the fuel rail first, pull it out a little bit so we can get to them better. So we're going to kind of resume disconnecting some of the other things now. So we're going to start by removing the PCV vacuum line right there to kind of get that out of the way. So we'll come back here. Here it is right here. So we'll pull that up. Be careful with that and just kind of set it off to the side like that. That way we have a little more clearance in here. And then now we have these two fuel lines right back here that we're going to go ahead and disconnect. Before we mess with those fuel lines, let's go ahead and just release any pressure that might be inside the Schrader valve. Just push that in. There we go. Get that out of there. And you can also release pressure by starting the vehicle and pulling the fuel pump relay out. I always just, most of the time I do it this way, but you can do either one. Okay, push it again, make sure. Okay, we're good. This is the fuel pressure regulator vacuum line. Let's also remove it here because this is part of the fuel rail. It's going to have to come over it. So we'll just gently pull up on that. There we go. Now to release these, you have this little clip here. Grab these two ends here. Pop it up like that. Slide that out of the way. And now we're going to use our little fuel line release key to pop that out. So here's our fuel line release tool, or as I call it, a key. And basically the way that it works, it slides right on here. You'll push it until you hear it click. Push it till you hear it click. Okay, and now you can slide that off. Make sure you put a rag underneath of it once it's disconnected, because as you pull it out,
you could have a little bit of fuel still in the line. There we go. Just pull that completely out. Okay, that one's off. Let's come and do the one underneath. And I moved everything out of the way so you can see it, but basically it's the same way as the top one. So we need to remove that little locking clip, and then we'll go ahead and put that release key back on this one, slide that one off, and then we'll be right back. And there you can see both lines are now off. Next, we're going to remove, there's 4, one there, one back there, one here, and one right back there. They are 4 8mm bolts that are holding the fuel rail in place. So let's go ahead and remove them so we can pop the fuel rail out. And they're not on too tight. A couple turns with the ratchet, and then you can take them off by hand. Now with everything disconnected and the fuel rail unbolted, we're going to use a little pry bar and gently just come under here. You don't want to be putting any pressure on anything. Just gently pop it up so we can get them out. So I'm going to go ahead and pull that so we can pop it up. Then we'll head off to the other side and do it. And once we get the other side lifted, then we can disconnect those remaining fuel injector harnesses. Move down here and come around on this one. And you'll see as I'm prying it, you will see the fuel injector coming up slowly. And that's what we're trying to do. See that coming up? So we're just gently going to work that out. Now that we've raised it a little bit with the pry bar to break the initial connection, we can grab it by hand. There we go. Pulls right out. Let's head over to the other side, pull the other one out. We'll do the same thing on this side. Just come here gently. Get right underneath of it. And give it a little pull. You hear it coming up. And now we can grab it by hand. Now you want to make sure as you're pulling up on this side, either put a rag over these 2 fuel lines, or if you have the fuel line caps, which I normally have, I don't have them with me right now, so I'm just using this, but you want to cover that because fuel will come out. Even though we released pressure, there's still fuel in there. But now we can grab it and we can lift it enough so we can get to these other harnesses. So I'm going to go ahead and disconnect them, and then we'll be back to remove the fuel rail. Okay, so everything is off, so the fuel rail now can come out. So we'll lift this up because we need to slide it past it. Want to be careful of these lines. Just work our way out gradually. Get it lifted up. And pull it forward. This side here on the passenger side can be a little hard because you got this connector here that's in the way of the fuel rail. So you just need to kind of pull it underneath gently, and you'll slide it right past it. Right there. And just pull it now this way, and you're clear. And you want to be careful with, make sure all the harness and lines are out of the way as you're bringing it out. Especially these vacuum lines. And here we go. Got to clear the alternator right there. Okay, here it comes. And make sure we're good. Perfect. And that's it. This is the fuel rail completely out.
Okay, now to put the fuel rail back in, you're pretty much just going to follow the same process, but obviously in reverse to get everything back in. Now, some of the things that we didn't cover here, for example, if you're removing the fuel rail, maybe you want to change the fuel injectors. I have a video where I show how to change the fuel injectors on this particular 5.3 liter V8. You can check that out via the link above. There will also be a link down in the description, along with a lot of other videos pertaining to work on this particular engine. Now, a lot of them pertain to the vehicle that this engine is in, which is the Chevy Trailblazer. But for the most part, overall, it's going to be similar to any of the other 5.3 liter V8s, whether it be the fuel pressure regulator, whether it be the fuel injectors, whether it be the mass airflow sensor, different things like that. So you can check those out below if you want to kind of drill into more of the components that we're not going to be covering in this video.
We're going to bring the fuel rail in, lift up this where we had to take it out, gently slide it in, still being aware of the vacuum lines that are there. We'll bring it down in here. Bring it here. Got to clear past this, past the alternator, and then remember we have that other little piece back there where we had an issue. So I'm going to work this in. So we just got it past here, but we need to make sure that we get the injectors into their proper ports. As you can see, there's one there, and that's for this one. So let's pull the fuel rail in. And we have everything lined up now. So these are lined up with their proper ports. If we come down along here, you can see for all of them, they are all in the proper position right here, where they can drop right in. So let's head off to the other side, make sure they're lined up, and then maybe connect whatever harnesses need to be connected while we have better access before we go ahead and put this down in place. We have our fuel lines here that need to be connected, but let's just make sure that the fuel rail itself, as you can see, it's slightly off. Line it up. Nice, that one's in place. And so is that one back there. And looking at the other ones, everything's in place. So we can now push this fuel rail down in and get those O-rings locked in place, and then we'll go ahead and connect everything. Now I'm going to attach cylinders 5 and 7. The injectors for those with the rail still loose, it's easier to get to them. And then we'll do 1 and 3 after it's in place. Then the even ones were fine. So let me go ahead and connect these before we actually get the rail completely locked in. Went ahead and attached those two. So now we've put the fuel rail back in line there. Did this one here as well. This one here, we have easy access, so I'll do that once we get everything in place. So let's go ahead and push the fuel rail down in place so we can finish connecting everything. So we're going to push it down. Get them all in place. There we go. Just finished pushing the fuel rail into place. All of the fuel injectors have all been locked in and clipped in place, so we're good to go. Let's head around back there so we can reconnect the fuel lines, and then we'll go ahead and screw down the fuel rail, and then we'll finish connecting the rest of the pieces and then put everything back together. We'll also get the PCV valve. Bring that back in over this way so we can get to these fuel lines back here. And we have the bottom one that we will put on first. Just slide it on till it clicks. Same with the top one. Put it on there. Slide it on till it clicks. There we go. Let's go ahead and put the locks back on them. And then we're done with those. Do the bottom one first. You just slide that in here. Then push it down like that. And now we'll do the top one. Same way. Slide that in. See if I can get a shot there for you. And then push it down. There we go. And here's a better shot close up here so you can see how they go on. And they're pretty much locking those in place. Let's go ahead and put this in. So we're going to move that in place here. We'll go ahead and get the nut, and then we'll also go ahead and connect all this back. We had removed this from here. So you want to go ahead and plug that back in. That one's good. We had this one up here on top. Got that, good. We had also removed this one here from the alternator. Get that one back on. And then there's this one up here up top. So this one right here. Okay, so those are good. Let's go ahead and put that nut back on. You don't want to over tighten that and break it.
Next, you're going to want to go ahead and take the PCV valve and go ahead and put that back in place. Make sure you press it all the way down. And then next we're going to go ahead and take this vacuum line and put it back on that connects to the fuel pressure regulator. And you want to be careful with that. That's very, very brittle, so you don't want to break that.
We're going to go ahead and put the screws back onto the fuel rail. So I'm just going to hand do them first, and then we'll go back and tighten them. So I'm going to put all four on, and then we'll be back. Okay, well that pretty much wraps up this video on how to remove the fuel rail from the 5.3 liter V8 General Motors engine. I hope this video was informative for you. I hope it helped you out with any projects you're working on. As mentioned already, if you want to look down in the description of this video, I have links to many other videos pertaining to this engine. So please send me any questions and comments. I would love to hear from you. As always, I appreciate all the support, so please like this video, subscribe to my channel. I'll see you next time.